and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Ridley, and this is my kitchen, as I found it. We are doing our second stop in Spain today. So let's see, last time we did our paella, so this time we're going to Andalusia, and we're going to be trying some gazpacho. Going down the history of gazpacho is a crazy, crazy rabbit hole, because... Hold that thought. Bark to you too. Give me a second. So going down the rabbit hole of gazpacho recipes, the origins of gazpacho seems to come from about the 13th or 14th century, and around that time it was stale bread that was then mashed with some vegetables, oftentimes peas, to make kind of a creamy white soup. The most famous gazpacho, and the one that we're going to be making today, didn't come about until after tomatoes were introduced to the European culinary landscape, and this is probably around the 16th century when this recipe really came about in Andalusia. But it's going to be focusing with tomatoes, ripe tomatoes, as the main ingredient, and so this is going to kind of give a bright, vibrant, punchy flavor to it. Then we're going to have a couple of vegetables added into there. So we're going to have about half of an onion. We're going to have maybe 3/4 or a full bell pepper, but it's a pretty large bell pepper. I don't know if I'm going to use all of it. We're going to peel and put in a cucumber. And then some recipes have a little bit of cayenne pepper or chili powder to add some heat. I'm going to be adding a single Anaheim. There is a type of cooking pepper in Italy, which is a similar long, mild green pepper like this, so I'm kind of hoping to get a little bit of kick from that without being spicy necessarily. So this is, in essence, going to be a blended vegetable soup, tomatoes, the extra vegetables, and then a tiny bit of some spices, oregano, salt, pepper, and garlic. And that is pretty much the entirety of what makes gazpacho gazpacho. It is a cold soup. However, nowadays, you can get really crazy with your variations on gazpacho. So this one is going to be the very traditional tomato, vegetable, and a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. But you can have watermelon gazpacho. You can have tomatillo gazpacho. There are entire categories of gazpacho based off of red gazpacho, which is tomato-based, white gazpacho, which has no tomatoes, but tends to have more bread to it. Oh, which, speaking of, we are putting a little bit of bread in there to add to the texture and creaminess, but it's not going to be a main element like it would have been in the original recipe, so throw that out there. But yeah, so that's it. It's a very, very simple cold soup, mix of vegetables, a little bit of textural and herb elements, and then you eat it. Very popular in Spain during the summertime because it gets very hot. This is supposed to be very cooling, very refreshing, very smooth. We're gonna see how it goes though. So we're gonna cut up some of the vegetables. The tomatoes we're just going to quarter and core. I'm going to chunk the tomato and the bell pepper and the cucumber and the Anaheim, and then everything gets blended together and we emulsify with the olive oil and a tiny bit of vinegar. So let me do some chopping and we'll try some cold soup. As far as making the gazpacho goes, there are sort of two different ways that I've seen this put together. One of them is you throw everything into a blender. I am still running into some issues with my blender and the crack in it, so instead I'm going to be using a immersion blender right here. So if you're going to be doing this in a blender, just know steps are exactly the same, but you'll throw it into the jar of the blender, blend it all together. This one I'm going to be putting everything into this little proofing jar right here, just a deep bowl, letting it soak for a little bit to absorb all the flavors, and then using the immersion blender to mix it together. But whichever way works best for you. So what I'm going to do now is just go through. Once again, I'm going to quarter all of the tomatoes. And then once I have them quartered, it's going to give me a corner that I can cut through right here to remove the woody core towards the top. Now, there are a lot of other ways that you can core a tomato. So a lot of people that I've seen have a tomato core you just push it into the top, it pulls out the core area, and then you can just cut it up however you need. This is the way that works best for me given the size of my knife and my not wanting to dirty another knife that is smaller but more dexterous. In the jar. All right, so we have done our coring of all of the tomatoes. We're on our last one right here. Once again, this is just to get that tough, woodier core out of there so that you have a really smooth result. Honestly, given that I'm going to be straining this at the end, it might not be as important to remove this part right here in this instance, like this woody core part is a lot tougher. I know that in the very, very traditional version of this, this was done with a mortar and pestle, and so they would actually smash all of the ingredients together and then you would try and get it as smooth as possible. Because we're able to strain it out, I think that we're gonna have less of an issue with that. But that is the technical way that you should be doing it. So I'm gonna toss these and then we'll be back for bell pepper, cucumber, onion, and anaheim. For the remaining vegetables, should just be a pretty quick bit because we are going to be processing these through blender, or in this case the immersion blender. We don't really have to worry too much about them being cut too small or diced or cubed like we have in previous dishes. So the important thing here is, once again, we are going to remove the core and the seeds. So I'll pull most of those out that I can, grab the rest of that white pith, toss it aside. All right, and then this one, I think I'm gonna use 3/4 of it instead of the full bell pepper. I've pulled the number of different ingredients from a lot of different recipes for this particular one because everybody has a very different opinion on how much of what should be in here. I've seen a recipe that had 12 tomatoes and 3 cucumbers against another recipe that had 8 tomatoes and half of a cucumber. Some specify the color and type of bell pepper, but in general, I was seeing that you would want about a medium-sized bell pepper. Because this one was a little larger, I'm going to trim it down a tiny bit. A medium-sized cucumber, and in that, they said about 8 inches, so I used that for my measurement here. And then for the mild green pepper, they just said, they gave me a few of them had a specific type of Italian pepper that I absolutely could not find here, but Anaheim was an acceptable solution. So once again, seeding and coring that one. And then for the onion, because it's a lot more dense than the others, I'm gonna say probably about 3/4 of the onion as well, just so that I don't have too much of anything overpowering it. I'm not sure what's gonna do that or if anything would do that, but based off of what I'm seeing, there's a bit of a delicate balance between specifically the onion, the pepper, the cucumber, and the tomatoes. I'm saying that like that's not all of the ingredients. We'll find out. So keep this off to the side for now. Let's do a quick peel on this one. Now, the thing I will say is delightful about this particular recipe is that because everything is uncooked, there's really not a whole lot of prepping, and I could probably do even less chopping here if I had my blender operational, because I could just toss everything in there and let it whiz. But I think there's no issue that we can have. Chopping it into pieces. So we've got our cucumber in here. Now I am going to just take the bread that I've got and add it in right now so that it can start absorbing some of the juices and everything. In the end, it is going to completely absorb everything, and it's mostly there to add a bit of a creamy texture. So It does specify to use stale bread. If you have day-old bread, that would be optimal. In this case, I just tore the bread pieces off of a fresher loaf earlier in the day and left them out in the open air to get them to stale up a little bit. All right, more scraps. Then we have our Anaheim. Now, if you are very, very, very heat sensitive or have sensitive skin, hand, eyes, things like that, definitely use gloves when you're dealing with any kind of pepper with any kind of heat. I have multiple times ended up with spicy eyes. It was not a pleasant experience. Anaheims are pretty mild for me, so I think I'll be okay. I might regret that later. But usually I tend to go for gloves more for jalapenos or habaneros, things with a bit more capsaicin. Same thing. We can just chop this into a few pieces, toss it in. It's going to get all mixed up and blended together anyways. Okay, so we have onions, Anaheims, cucumbers, tomatoes, bread, bell pepper, and we're gonna toss in a little bit of some fresh oregano leaves. I forgot to put this out when I had the ingredients out earlier, so you may notice that it is a sudden appearance at the table. Of all of the different spices, I've seen parsley, chives, and oregano the most frequently, and oregano is the one that happened to be available at my market. So, using oregano for this one today. We also have the garlic, which I guess, in order just to ensure that it gets thoroughly mixed into everything, I can chop it into a couple of pieces and mix that in. Once again, everything should be a smooth consistency when we're done with this, so it shouldn't matter too much the size it's in right now. Last thing, we're gonna add a healthy amount of salt and pepper in here. What's a healthy amount? That much. Pepper. Okay, so then we're gonna also add a little bit of sherry vinegar. I was seeing sherry vinegar, apple cider vinegar, really just a little bit of tanginess is what you're looking for here. Anywhere between 2 teaspoons and 2 tablespoons. Once again, this is an enormous, enormous range. I'm gonna do a little bit now, and then I'll taste it later. And if I need to, we'll move from there. And a little bit of the olive oil over the top. Again, the olive oil amount here, I have seen vary from a 1/4 cup to a full cup. So I'm gonna start with some. We're gonna toss this all together, allow for the bread to absorb some of these liquids. I'm gonna blend everything, and then from there we'll taste it, see what we like, add some spices, but this is gazpacho pre-blending. Now, as this is sitting, the salt and everything should help to pull some moisture out of these vegetables, so you will notice, or you should notice, some moisture accumulation at the bottom. I'm really hoping that happens now that I've set it in advance of the results, but we're gonna see when that comes up whether or not we succeeded. Once this has sat for about 30 minutes or so, I will come back. We're gonna use the immersion blender to blend everything up, and then I will do some minor adjustments with the vinegar, the olive oil, the oregano, the salt, the pepper, just to get it to a flavor that I like, and then we strain it, and that is the entirety of the recipe. So let's give this a few minutes to soak in all of this oily, vinegary, vegetable-y existence-ness, and I guess we'll be back in about 30 minutes. See you then. This has been sitting for just about 30 minutes now. We have got a little bit of liquid that has accumulated to the bottom there, so that's good. From my understanding, next step is just to blend. So a lot of things have said you can separate it out into multiple batches if you need to. I'm gonna see what I can do because I've got a pretty big container here that I think will be all right, but we're gonna find out. So what I can say right now already is that if you are using an immersion blender like this, it's functioning, but it would probably do better if I had chopped them into smaller pieces. If you're working in a full-size blender, I don't think you'll have that problem. It takes a while to get going, but you can get it going. It's a liquid now. So I'm gonna go get a spoon and I'm gonna taste it. And then I'm gonna make a decision based off of that whether or not I think it needs more oil, salt, pepper, or vinegar. Now, gazpacho is supposed to be served cold. I've been told chilled, not iced, so it should be cold but not like freezing cold. And then also, of course, strained, so this is not going to be the right texture, just going for flavor here, but that's fascinating. It needs more salt, for sure. I would say actually a decent amount of salt. I am going to add a touch more pepper. The Anaheim pepper, just a little bit of it is coming through. It's not overwhelming at all, but it's definitely there. And then I've seen some recipes use some lemon or lime juice in addition to the vinegar, and I get why. A little bit of tanginess is nice. I am gonna up my vinegar just a tiny bit here. So this is probably about a tablespoon and a half of vinegar overall, maybe a couple teaspoons of salt or a teaspoon and a half, and probably about 3/4 of a teaspoon to a teaspoon of pepper. Let me blend this in, see where we're at. I'm gonna drizzle in a little bit of the olive oil while it's still going, just because that's a step a lot of them use for emulsification. I don't really know if I need that necessarily here, but the mouthfeel isn't quite as smooth, and I think that a little bit of oil will assist in that. So, I'm gonna try. Better. So I'm gonna leave the vinegar right where it's at. A little bit more salt, so bringing that up to about 2 teaspoons total. I think the pepper's okay. And then I'm gonna do a tiny bit more of the olive oil, then strain it out, and we're gonna go with that as our final dish, but this is very fascinating. Now for this one, I am doing a chinois strainer here. You should be able to use standard mesh strainer. If you're using one that is a little bit thicker, I think that this might be too thick for a coffee filter, so I would probably look at something more of like a paper towel as a replacement filter. But the chinois here should get us a pretty decent strain for most of those thicker solids. I'm gonna do this in 2 batches. And then just press it through. Boy, and this will take a little bit because we are getting a lot of solids out of there. So, give me a few minutes of straining. We'll do it in a couple of batches, but when we're done, that's gazpacho. It strained really well. It took a while. I would say with the chinois, a good 20 minutes of straining, maybe a little more. But what we have here is incredibly smooth, and it's done an amazing job of emulsifying. So I was worried with the oil, because some of them said to like do that little drizzle in for all of the oil, but others were saying you can kind of mix it in early like we did. I wasn't sure if that would mess with the emulsification. The answer is no. I'm gonna put this in the fridge to chill it just a little bit because it has been out. I did pre-chill the vegetables before I cut into them just to try and get them as cold as we could and to make sure that this wasn't room temperature when we were at this point. But it should be a chilled soup, so I'm gonna give it another probably 30 minutes in the fridge just to cool down. And then we're gonna try it.
All right, gazpacho time. Gazpacho time. So this is a soup, you said?
It's a cold soup.
Cold soup.
I've got a little bit of a crusty bread to go with it. A lot of places will serve it with croutons on top. This is so fascinating.
Share or dry. It's very vegetable-y.
It is. And it's got a uniform mix of flavors to it, like it all comes together.
It's very, yeah, like...
It's tomatoey. It's cucumbery.
Yes.
It's bell peppery.
It's very potent in that kind of way. Not in a bad way, unless you don't like vegetables, because that is the taste.
If you do not like tomatoes, do not get this type of gazpacho.
I mean, all of it is just like, all of the vegetables that went into this, I can kind of taste them almost distinctly, but they still kind of meld together.
And the pepper, the Anaheim pepper, it just kind of a little tickle at the back of the tongue. It's not spicy, but you can tell it's there.
That's what that is.
Just a tiny bit.
You're right. That was a good way to describe it, the tickle, because as you said that, I felt it. So.
It's very smooth. It's very thin. So if I, like my concept of a soup, especially a vegetable soup, would be closer akin to, say, a tomato soup. Tomato soup is significantly thicker than this. This is very thin, it's very crisp. I've been told that you can even have this served like in a chilled mug and you just drink it. I could see this being a great, refreshing, super hot out, I just need to cool down kind of meal.
Sure. Personally, I prefer a lot more protein in my meals.
I mean, fair. And when I drink, I usually would get, like, ice water. I wouldn't go straight to iced tomato.
So, for me, this is not, I wouldn't go to this for really any reason. I don't hate it, but I'm not a huge fan of just vegetables.
And it very much is that. It's kind of in the vein of ratatouille, but it's not as hearty.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I like ratatouille a little bit more. And maybe it was a texture thing. I don't know.
Well,
those
texture, heat.
Yeah.
Cold vegetable for me in a liquid form. It reminds me of V8.
I mean, kind of, but it's more...
But it's not.
Yeah.
Flavor-wise, not. But when I think of liquid vegetables...
This is more intense than that. It's just weird because everything is so kind of mellow, but like... I don't know. This feels kind of punchy.
Yeah.
With the flavors. Like, they're just like, oh, that's cucumber. Oh, that's tomato. Oh, that's...
Onion.
And the pepper.
I'm definitely glad that I reduced the amount of onion, because any more would have taken this over. It's already got I think that's where the punchiness is coming from, is that onion tone. Mm-hmm. And then the tomatoes kind of give it a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of tanginess. The vinegar is very important, because that tanginess adds a lot of depth to it. The fresh oregano, if I didn't know it was in there, would be harder for me to pull out. It's still, my brain is telling me it's basil and that I'm eating a basil tomato soup, but then no part of this is basil when I take a bite.
No. Oregano. Yeah. I mean, this is fine.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but
it was good to experience. It's definitely,
Yeah.
I can see why it's popular, and it's more popular. I mean, right now, where we are, it's starting to get warmer, but it's absolutely not midsummer. It's not hot yet. It's still cold out still. Probably not the season for this kind of dish either. I think that we would receive it better if it were 110 degrees outside. Would you go for it at that point even regularly? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is I think you would like it better.
It would make more sense then, maybe.
All right, cool. But, so, this is Andalusia, Gazpacho. We'll have our stop 3 for Spain next. The first 2 have been really interesting, but so far we're on an incline, so...
Let's hope the next one is like a large step up.
Yeah. So,
in terms of flavors that I like. Specifically. Because like I said...
Isn't that what makes
if this is what you're going for, it's great. But my palate is geared more towards something more hearty and less vegetable-y.
I'm trying to think about what this would be like if it were watermelon gazpacho. Because that was one of the flavors.
That's a thing?
That is a thing. Watermelon gazpacho.
Maybe a little bit more mellow, I would imagine.
Are we?
Which might actually be better.
Are we moving into smoothie territory at this point? Do they keep it savory?
Without the chunks, though.
I don't know. But
that would be interesting. I would think if this were fruits instead, I might like it a lot more.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of varieties of gazpacho that are fruit-based. Strawberry gazpacho is a thing. Watermelon gazpacho is a thing.
That sounds great, actually.
All right,
We
so
should have tried that.
So maybe we'll try a varietal of gazpacho later. But I still think it was kind of cool to try the more traditional one.
This was definitely something super new.
And I get why
so I'm glad that
like it.
I'm glad that I tried it.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll end up in my regular rotation, though.
Well, there we go. Gazpacho.
All right, we'll see you next time. Spain turn 3. And, yeah, try it then. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you on our next stop.